Hey everybody, welcome to another Cipher Session. My name's Yo,
Hello, everybody. My name is Manolo, the Abundant Alchemist.
Enrique.
and today we have a very special guest. We have my man Graham Friedman. What's up, Graham?
What is
How's it
up?
going?
Welcome.
Welcome,
And
Graham.
thank you for jumping on board with us, Graham. We really appreciate it,
You know it. Always happy to chat.
for sure. And just to give a little intro, I've known Graham for 16 years, and he's definitely a visionary person. He's came in and told me about crypto in like 2009 before I even knew what the heck it was. He was talking about it. He also was always ahead of the curve. I remember one story that I often tell people that most people probably hear me say is that I had a friend named Graham who told me that one day cell phones were going to replace DSLR cameras. And he's right. You
I
remember
still
that,
love
Graham?
my DSL.
But you were ahead of the curve.
I know. I
Visionary.
mean, we're moving in a direction, guys. If you just pay attention, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And you were early on Bushwick, Graham. I think you were one of the first people that I know that was moving to Bushwick before it got trendy.
Ah, I was over on Graham Ave. Can't pass that up.
That's it. So, Graham, why don't you tell us a little bit about your crypto journey? Tell us a little bit about what you do now for Republic. Kick it off, man.
Yeah, absolutely got it. So I would say a lot of people in the industry are coming from a variety of different places. I actually met Yo way back in the day. Was full-time cinematographer shooting advertisements. So a little bit different, but you know, very used to living in a fake world with fake people saying fake things, doing fake stuff, right? Kind of makes sense. But my transition actually starts, I had a roommate all throughout college. I was studying filmmaking, really into cameras. My roommate was trading Forex, taught me all about how you could trade currencies for profit. And I was like, never really wanted to stay in the rat race. So always thinking about ways to make recurring revenue, try to figure out how to make your money work for you, which is like really the idea at the end of the day. So he was trading these currencies, and a couple years later, I found Bitcoin. Really looked at it. My head, when I read Satoshi's white paper, it blew me away. But I kind of pictured it as like robot money. Basically, first thought I had was like autonomous cars are clearly going to happen. How do you pass each other, right? You're probably going to go up to one, make a deal, accept that contract, pass, go on
Right.
forward, and so forth. So that's how I saw Bitcoin working. I would say it's probably a little bit different today, and there's like a lot of development that happened. But man, back then you could go to Union Square. People were trading BTC for like 25 cents a pop. I was unfortunately a little too lazy. I was like, I'll check it out later. Like, sounds cool. But a lot of lessons in missing opportunities. So just hop on things when they happen. But from there, my roommate ends up hitting me up one day. I've been talking his ear off about tokens. He synced me up with a couple other guys. One exit a startup, another from the banking sector. And my roommate had gone to banking at that point in time, and we just basically said, "You want to throw our robo monies together and make a little fund?" So I literally walked off set. That year, Ethereum had just come out, and I was like aggressively putting all my money into it, not doing any 401k. Stopped eating good food, went straight into like instant ramen, and just bought ETH like a mofo. So I said, hell yeah, walked off set, went into this fund. We had a really great time through 2017. 2018 starts coming around. People kind of had different attitudes. So we wrapped it up. It was all chill. But I had gotten really good at advising my clients on how to do a lot of the processes of launching an asset. So I ended up taking a colleague of mine and I went over to Republic, which is really a couple different companies. If you go to our website, you'll probably see that we sell equity in little US startups. The crowd can get in it. So really what's going on there is that if you want to invest privately into a company in the United States, you kind of got to be wealthy already. You need to be an accredited investor. So $1 million or more, like it's kind of crazy. So what we were able to do is use a new thing called Reg CF, came out during the Obama administration, and it allowed any mom and pop to throw some money into like early stage startups. It's a lot of what Republic does. I went over to Republic Crypto with a small team where we really worked with companies to help them launch tokenized assets. Since then, I've been part of probably about 30 different token launches. I've done every single part from getting them set up with law firms. So basically, when you issue a token, you've got to do that outside of the boundaries of the United States. How do you do that? What's the relationship with people who are actually building the technology? How do we do this in a decentralized way? We do everything from actually building smart contracts to raising their full amount of money, to connecting them with exchanges, to connecting them with partners, other developers, hiring, all the way through doing public token sales, which we handle at Republic. So there's that side of it. And then I also sit on our fund. We have a $60 million fund that we use to invest into companies that we then work with and really make sure that they can grow. I say we, but those are actually two different companies. The fund sits in a different division than the advisory, but they all sit under Republic. So that's kind of where I'm at. I would say we're very hands-on, basically everything before they get listed on an exchange, and just try to support, founders as they go through this process. We've learned it. We've been through it. So we can help people with a lot of pitfalls, point them in the directions they need to go. And the go-to-market timeline is really tight on these things. So it's pretty useful to have some people that have done this once or twice before. That's where we're at.
So would you say that most of everything that's needed in that world is all in-house for you, or what would you say is you outsource?
We're getting there, right? Back in the day, we outsourced a lot. As we've continued to grow, we've begun to, see what we could bring in-house. Obviously, it's much easier to build a pipeline if you can control it. To this day, I would say we have the majority of things. Some of the big bottlenecks that still exist are auditing law firms, not law firms, just auditing firms, code auditors. They're extremely in demand. We don't have that in-house. And we do work with a ton of law firms just on like all that structuring. But we would like to be able to facilitate everything, be a one-stop shop, and make it as easy as possible for people with great ideas to pump this out.
Awesome. And now, what would you say is the difference? Because I've looked up other companies that may be similar, but also differentiate greatly from what you guys do, such as like, Micro Ventures, Start Engine. Besides you guys taking in and embracing crypto, what would you say are like the main differences that you could find between Republic and these other companies?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. So like I'm in the entirely crypto world. So I would say that those things are really competition on the Web 2 side of things, which again, that's like actually a separate company. So Republic has the retail department, which does those crowd funds, one company. We've got crypto, that's another company. And then we've got capital, which is like banking services. So to some degree, sure, they offer some similar things. We're really trying to embrace the blockchain technology because at the end of the day, we think that everything that can be tokenized will be tokenized. So, to that degree, our competition on the token sales or the token offerings really sits more in like CoinList, who does a fantastic job, but they can't really sell to the US. So that's where we step in. We're competing aggressively for international expansion. We just acquired Cedars, which is a London-based company. And we've been building up our internal developer stack just on all things blockchain, where we've now built on Solana, Ethereum. We built one of the first security tokens on Algorand.
Nice.
So soon when that's released, the Republic Note, you'll be able to own a Republic Note. And as any of the companies that really go through our platform do exit and distribute profits, that will flow back through the Republic Note and get distributed. So, it'll kind of be a more of like a play on the company as a whole rather than investing in specific ones. So we're pretty broad. We're trying to really stay on the cutting edge. And of course, we have a very open and loving relationship with all things crypto and blockchain. So I think that's big edge as we continue to move forward. And I think we're seeing mass adoption happening really quickly.
Absolutely. Excellent. Very cool.
I actually have a question to your company. In a previous video with Charlie Frim, you mentioned regulation in your space. Can you kind of define what regulation in your space looks like and how you work with regulators in order to be able to achieve what it is that Republic is trying to achieve?
Yeah, 100%. So we're specifically talking with securities regulation, which if you spend enough time in the crypto world, you'll start to hear people try to position themselves as a utility token, right? The real crux is there's this thing called the Howey test, 1938. A farmer in Florida starts renting out plots of his property to investors, and then turns around and says, I'll give you a share of the orange proceeds.
Oranges.
This is when securities really come up. And, in a nutshell, a security is the profit of owning this thing coming from somebody else's labor? Like, is a third party's efforts producing returns? Then you're a security. Pretty simple. So in crypto land, you can defend that you're a protocol. It gets really interesting when you look at the Ripple case right now in front of court.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
I was going to segue into that, but you brought it up. Go for it.
Yeah. Super rad. So it's actually a really interesting time. I mean, again, these securities laws they're not up to speed with this new tech stack, right? We're just moving way faster. Things are happening. It's, it's a clash of the old versus the new, and we're trying to figure it out. But so, for example, when you look at this Ripple lawsuit, it's very interesting because Ripple is saying that XRP is not a security. The SEC is trying to say they did. They raised a ton of money. And basically the stance is, well, you didn't say what is and what isn't, and we are under the impression that Ethereum is not a security. Same with Bitcoin. Those are the only two that they've really said no to. And the interesting thing is when you go back and you look at when Ethereum was being built, right? Vitalik never takes ownership of it. He says that he's always contributing to this protocol, right? I'm just this guy out there, Vitalik Buterin, brilliant mathematician, coder.
Right.
And I am working on this open source thing called Ethereum. It's not mine. It's not a business that I own. And the language actually reflects that, right? They talk about contributing. They talk about Ethereum, sort of this like third person tense. When it came to Ripple, they're looking at, well, the language is that Ripple is this private company building XRP for your own purposes. And you have this, centralized kind of business structure that sure as hell seems like you're building something for your own sake. So that gets like very complex, starts to get really interesting. And that's what people are really digging into right now. In terms of sort of where we sit with our regulations, right? We are a licensed platform to do the crowdfund, which when we started the business meant you could raise up to $1 million as a company and sell it to anybody. And the general rules around like selling shares of your company are that people have to be accredited investors. Again, that means they're already kind of have money to risk, which doesn't make sense, right? Like getting in early in Uber is near impossible for the average person. So that's crowdfunding. Subsequently, or I should say recently, they actually upped that number from 1 million to 5 million. So that's really cool for people that want to raise money and get that money from their users, right? Their fans, rather than getting it from like some investors. We also do what's called Reg D and Reg S. All of these are securities exempt offerings, which means you don't have to call this thing a security and go do an IPO, which costs, tens of millions of dollars. So in Reg D, we can sell to the United States. They have to be accredited, unfortunately, but they're the only ones permitted. And then we can do Reg S, which means no US citizens whatsoever. Last but not least, there's something called A+. It's like an IPO light. It's very intense. You can see they get more aggressive on the scrutiny, but Reg A+, you can raise up to $75 million, basically stand at the top of a mountain and tell everybody about it, which is cool. So if you've ever been on like Instagram and there's a company that says like invest in this company, they're probably doing that A+. But these are the things that we have to move through that you can basically follow and sell some of your equity within these strict rules. And that way you don't have to do like a public offering on the stock exchange. So that's really where we work. The thing with tokens, it's, you know, it's all super nebulous. It's extremely gray. So when we work with people that want to sell a token, we don't give them any legal advice. That's not our role. We're really a tech platform to say, you know, you have $20 million of tokens you want to sell, and you have $20 million worth of people that want to buy it, right? We want to be the place with the licenses and the know-how that can at least facilitate that. That being said, they have to set up their own companies. It's never going to be a US company because of all these rules that are super unclear. Everyone ends up setting them up in the Caymans, in Panama. We're really seeing a geographical game of whack-a-mole as different places try to make different incentives. So FTX just went to the Bahamas because they're trying to attract it. So it's a really interesting game that's going on here where the United States is kind of looking at this stuff a little side-eyed. A lot of other countries are saying, hey, maybe we can incentivize these new young tech companies to come to us. And the regulatory landscape is just it's a big dance.
While you're on that, G, you think regulators in this country know how to work with decentralized structures, in your opinion, from what you experienced with them?
Yeah, you know, from what we've been seeing, there is a bit of a conflict. So we do have some stuff just between the Trump administration and the present one, right? Like we got Gary Gensler this year. He's trying to kind of crack the whip on it a little bit. So they're not being quite as open. You can see some of our older senators are just like not quite getting it. Like it's the same as with the Mark Zuckerberg trial, right? And they're kind of asking questions about email, not trial, but same vibe. So I do think we have kind of like an understanding problem. I definitely think that. I'm just being polite. What we are seeing is that a lot of money is being poured into the 2024 elections. Basically, if you paid any attention to the infrastructure bill, they tried to sneak in a little earmark that would have made all protocols really into securities exchanges. Didn't make any sense, would have absolutely ground to a halt anyone in the US's ability to like build one of these businesses. And let's be clear, doesn't stop anything about this technological growth. It just incentivizes people to not do it in the United States. So to me, that really bums me out. Obviously, I'm a proud US citizen. I don't want to go anywhere else, but they are making it extremely hard to do just about everything. And that's, you know, getting a lot of people to look elsewhere. So that's all a very interesting, like constantly updating thing. But that, you know, on topic with what you asked, we are seeing a lot of that money going into Washington for 2024. I think you're going to see a lot more senators realizing that there is a user base, you know, under 30, there's like, I think 30% of the population owns this asset. So a lot of them have done well with it, right? If you've been pretty patient, you should have done well. It's only if you're really kind of chasing prices. So we're all going to love this thing, right? It's made us money in a world that's been really, really hard for the millennials and below to accrue any wealth. And you want to take that from us. It's getting feisty. So we did stop the infrastructure bill like in its tracks, which was wildly impressive. I don't think anyone even knew that earmark was in there, let alone that it was like so caustic, right? And it woke this beast, successfully stopped the bill from being signed. And that showed a lot of really excellent lawyers in the space that they should probably, you know, post up in Washington and start lobbying for this thing. So if you ever want to look on Twitter, there's Jake Cervinsky. He used to be Curve Protocol's lawyer, but he is now leading the charge down in DC. Does all sorts of really cool stuff. And you can tell the same with the sports branding. They're going to be doing the behind the scenes lobbying branding as well.
Sick, dude.
Lobbying for 2024. That's something to look forward to. I think I saw something in Instagram where they gave like a breakdown of the companies that are actually spending money for the 2024 lobbying. Ripple was on the list. It was interesting. You said something earlier, kind of to take a pivot when you mentioned crowdfunding, right? When you view a lot of these NFT projects that are kind of selling NFTs to raise money to get their project off the ground, How do you view that in comparison to crowdfunding? And do you think that some of these NFTs would fall into like the security space as a result?
Yeah, it's a super good question. It's interesting. Republic launched because we thought crowdfunding was so cool, and then the ICO popped up, and we did run a lot of these things in parallel because we're like, oh, those are really effective crowdfunding mechanisms as well. And now you're bringing the NFT raise into it, right? They are super effective. So an NFT actually skirts by the securities law because it's a 1-for-1, right? So you can't really argue that you're selling shares of this revenue generating thing. It's literally a single piece. Now, there's a lot of people out there that want to fractionalize NFTs, and that's when you start to run into trouble. That really becomes a clear security. Why are they buying this fraction of a piece of art? Does that artist contribute? Is there like a core team? If you start having a currency attached to it, etc. So as long as you're pretty on the level and your NFT is like a 1-for-1, you're in a safe place. Now, I think there's some really cool mechanisms out there. I've worked with a lot of teams that are doing some really fun stuff. The biggest thing about NFTs is that the royalties can flow back. For anyone who's never bought one, the artist or the creator, the minter of the NFT itself, can put in a royalty flow to their own wallet. So let's say it's 10%. That means 10% of every sale for the rest of time comes back to the original wallet. People are using that to like launch businesses, to start concerts. There's one called the Catalina Whale Club on Solana. I know the guys behind it, and they did it to start an indie music label and kick it off with this big party. It's kind of got some like fun Fire Festival vibes, but they're kind of playing with it and make really fun in that regard. But that's like a cool one, right? And I think, we're seeing a lot of success with like redeemable NFTs too, where maybe it's not about art. It's like, this is just a ticket. Gary V, obviously big on that. His V friends are all tickets to the conferences. So there is real value backing this thing. It's just, it also permits for markets to be made because I can trade it between wallets. But then it gets really cool because you can do token gated access. I've got so many clients that are building new apps that provide all of these small community interactions for anyone that shares the same NFT. We're building entire like metaverse worlds where, if you have a Bored Ape, it gets you into the Bored Ape world. You have to have that thing in your wallet to get access. So it's very interesting. This is a like total tangent, but like the cryptocurrency space is about inclusivity and everybody having access to things. And then, the NFT space is kind of about exclusivity and cool clubs. But we are seeing NFT raises all the time to launch businesses. I think it's super cool. You have to have a really core reason as to why you're doing this, or people will call you out for being a scam. But there's some really cool approaches out there. Again, everything Gary Vee's doing. He even did a private restaurant recently, Fly Fish Club.
Fly fishing, yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the Soho House. That model's been around for a long time. But I just want to see people experiment with it. I think the 10,000 profile pictures is getting a little bit old. Wolf Game was super cool. They changed the game because they brought NFTs and DeFi together. But I just, people are experimenting. They're trying all sorts of things. And the best part is that if you drop something, somebody else can build on top of it. So that's where it always gets crazy. Just because one person starts something doesn't mean that like another person can't take it to the stratosphere.
True. I have so many questions, but I think my next question I think will be in terms of network, right? So a lot of these NFTs are built on the Ethereum network, but with all the high gas fees, do you think that Ethereum will maintain that stronghold, or do you see another network kind of stepping in and pulling some of those NFTs away from the Ethereum network?
100%. So, I mean, Solana's already doing that. Like the Solana NFT game is pretty strong. The one thing to think about though is like, let's say you get past that $100 gas fee, which I hear you is like crazy. If it 10x's on Ethereum, that's way more than if it 10x's on Solana. So like, there's a lot of flip sides. Solana, like let's say you're building on it, right? Like that blockchain has gone down a couple times recently. They're not supposed to really do that. Granted, every time they have a problem, they patch it and repair it, and these things get stronger and stronger. But that's not really they're supposed to be up and running. That's kind of the whole idea. Ethereum itself, I do believe that all roads lead to Ethereum.
Okay.
No matter what, a lot of these new blockchains are EVM compatible. That's the Ethereum virtual machine.
Yep. EVM.
So what?
No. Yeah. Sorry. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. So, Ethereum's, I hate to say it because it stresses me out too, and the gas fees are really expensive, but Ethereum has now proven itself that the security on the network is so reliable that it can charge these really high fees. So what's being done to fix that is that the user transactions are being moved elsewhere. So whether it's on a layer 2, we're seeing it with Polygon. There's XDAI, which just got rebranded to Gnosis Chain, or alternative L1s like Avalanche that also plug back into the EVM, right? Then there's also roll-ups. We've got Optimism and ZK, which just takes a bunch of different transactions and rolls them up. But either way, all the transactions are occurring somewhere else where maybe, security of the caliber of Ethereum is not needed. So they can sacrifice security for speed and cost, and they will all be rolled up into one transaction that then goes into the Ethereum network. So we're really going to start seeing Ethereum gas prices and transactions being paid for by other protocols, and users will continue on their other protocol. Basically, it's just getting like too strong. It's going to be, computer money, as I kind of thought Bitcoin was in the beginning.
Interesting. All right, one more NFT question, I promise. Right. So in terms of the NFT space, do you see the NFT space being limited to art, or how do you see the NFT space evolving over the course of the next 10 years? And what are the biggest hurdles to get there?
Sure. So to me, the NFTs have and always will be the object permanence layer of the metaverse. So that just means if you want something in the metaverse, it's going to be an NFT. So I think it'll be so ubiquitous, we'll stop saying this term NFT because it won't really matter. Be like, do you have a couch in the metaverse? Be like, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's an NFT token somewhere that represents that you own that couch, right? Because that's how it has to work in this sort of world where basically whatever's in your wallet is going to be around you. So in that regard, I think, NFTs are not limited to art. They're going to be every dang thing that exists inside your 3D virtual world. We're starting with art because it's super simple, right? We're already familiar with like how cool and collectible art can be. It's not a very big departure. But, that being said, that's why I think it's so cool that Wolf Game showed us that you could have NFTs with like DeFi staking mechanics, and your NFT could actually be part of an ecosystem where it's generating some sort of currency from proof of stake. And in Wolf Game's place, they're doing it as a game. So they have the rules to the game, and, you're disincentivized to break them. But we'll continue to see explorations like that. Other examples, though, of art that I think have been really cool is that they do kind of let us have like data reactive art or like living art, right? Everyone looked at Harry Potter and thought that the moving paintings were so cool. I don't understand why they look at NFTs and they're reluctant, but there's some really cool technology out there like async.art, where for anyone that is an artist or has used Photoshop, you'll know that it works in layers. And in async, you can make any one of those layers responsive to a piece of external data. So there's a really cool piece of a girl rocking a mask, and basically the mask will become opaque or transparent depending on COVID numbers in, I think, New York. You could have a layer be responsive to the weather. So like the sky would change from bright and sunny to rainy and stormy depending on like what the weather forecast is, right? So we're getting in to really cool things. And the NFT itself, it's not one protocol. There's ERC 720. There's like, Solana's got its own protocol. I think 1150 is another one. Like, they're just pieces of code that sit on top of the Ethereum layer that tell you how this token interacts, right? So an ERC 20 is a currency token. You can mint 10,000 of them. They can all be interchanged. An ERC 720 does not do that. Or is it 721? I mean, they keep updating new ones, NFTs that do specific things, building new ways for you to be able to rent it out and still have like, rental streaming money come back to you. So yeah, I think that art is just the lowest hanging fruit, and it's very digestible and like easy to understand. But we're going to start just having more and more things. I would say by the future, when like AR, VR is really strong, all the spam in your like mailbox is going to be an NFT of some sort or another.
That's hilarious. That's great.
We're at the beginning of the NFT stuff, nowhere near the end.
Nice.
Very cool.
And G, you mentioned like renting out an NFT. It made me remind myself about how when I used to play Xbox, like I used to play Destiny. I don't know if you played it, but I remember grinding and getting the Gallahorn, which was like a bazooka for those who don't game.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think I'm like, I could only imagine now the capability of being able to go to sleep and put it on, you know, and have someone rent it and reward me in some sort of token. You know?
Yeah, 100%. You know, to me, like crypto is just one piece. And the thing I'm like truly enamored in is the fourth industrial revolution, right? This change that society's having towards the digital world, away from the workplace that was like throwing us into factories to make, you know, X widgets over Y hours. Like we're not there anymore, right? The pandemic definitely put a freaking stranglehold on that. I don't think people will ever go to the office like 5 days a week unless you really have to be. Like certain jobs can't get away from it, but it's looking like everyone wants to be home at least 1 or 2 days, right? So all of this stuff is like absolutely happening, and there's a lot of questions of if AI is going to come out and it's going to be super dope, like that's going to take a lot of jobs. If robots come out and they're super dope and that's happening, they're going to take a lot of jobs. So we absolutely have to look at different ways to transmit value, right? Like it's just not going to be you. It's funny you said grind to get the Gallahorn, but like, you know, you're just grinding for a paycheck, right? Yeah. And if we get the robots to outsource all that, then yes. So I look at crypto as just like, you know, the experimentation on how are we changing our entire perspective of value. Our entire lives, it's been money, right? Like I work hard, I get money. Money is value. But now it's going to start to be, I prefer to get paid in like Destiny dollars, right? Because maybe I go home every night and I play that. And like I don't actually spend any money going out to dinners or whatever. I just want like my Destiny character to be badass. So we're gonna slowly move away from. I think the concept of money period will just disappear because there's gonna be little money stores in like whatever game you're in and whatever app, maybe in like your bank account. Decentralized finance though is already breaking us up from the bank account. It's gonna be like, what protocol are you farming, right? Where are you generating yield? Where are you mining assets from? Helium, right? So once we start trading cryptos, like you're never really using a dollar intermediary. It's just kind of like, where do I want my value to be? Like I could put it to work, just generating yield and making me richer. I could put it to work, getting my character some fatty ass NFTs. You know, look, it's just going to get crazier and crazier. Some of the like I've got a pretty wild mind on what I think like is possible in the future, and you know I encounter some clients and they just like blow me right out of the water. So interesting things are happening. And you know, just on that topic too, like the millennials, you know, came into I think crypto early, but like Gen Z has really grown up with it.
Right.
So some of the ideas that are coming out of like the Gen Z crew, they're like, oh, we've been used to the idea of like digital money forever. Like now it does something real funky, right? Whereas before we were like, we just want to know that it can go from A to B and like be secure. They're like, we don't care. It can do all. And so that's the most fun part. You know, I also get really geeked when it's just like, this is open source tech, guys. Like,
absolutely,
some 12-year-old that's just a G could build the next future financial app that's like the greatest thing that the whole world uses. So
absolutely,
that's really cool, and it's like a whole different world than where closed banking systems, which have really been all of existence.
Awesome. So speaking of, you know, new blood coming in and adding spice and, you know, scaling things to ways that prior couldn't have been imagined, what would you say is one of the wildest companies that have been launched on your Republic platform?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the ones that like really blew us away was we were working with Artifact, and they got bought by Nike, right? Like, ooh, that's pretty dang cool.
Absolutely.
So that just goes to show you, and it's kind of funny when it's like people knock on NFTs and you're like, well, Nike's buying NFT companies. Do you really want to bet against Nike knowing cool? Like that sounds like a losing bet. So that one was really, really cool. You know, it really depends. Our clients are all over the place. So we've got a lot of games, right? We have a AAA gaming partnership. So we are seeing, you know, like platform level games coming up. They want to access a token. We really got some popularity recently with one called Star Atlas. We did their economics and like CEO of FTX like shared it, loved it. Really cool. It's like one of those infinity games where you go out into space and you settle, right, and it goes on forever or until the servers shut down. So that one's really neat, and we're seeing a lot of appetite there. I'm still very interested in DeFi. You know, we've got a lot of clients that they come with an application, and you're like, "Yo, that's like an entire sector of a bank." And I know some people are like, "Well, those are jobs going away." Like those jobs are going away. Again, we have to figure out like how to rejigger our value prop here. Everybody does. It's not really going to be an issue. Like you just don't get to pick. So that kind of stuff I think is really cool. I personally love the financial revolution stuff because I just think finance has been the same for such a long period of time. That like I'm really enamored just to be like, yo, when the internet first got introduced, it was like 2 emails being sent back and forth. And people were like, well, that's cool, but the Postal Service can send mail everywhere. Right. Now look at the Postal Service and, you know, I'm on the internet every day with like a fake rabbit face overlaid over me. So that was all stuff I never could have imagined. I'm like the most excited for the things I never could imagine when it comes to B value. You know, aside from that, just some of the worlds that people are diving into. We do have like a couple Metaverse projects. They're starting to see users. Really, really neat. Yeah. So, you know, I just honestly, it's the mix of all of them together, just like keeping me in the loop.
It must be fascinating, right? You just hear all these ideas, people just throwing around ideas, and just when you think something could reach its limit, someone could just come up with something. And I think in the metaverse, right, anything is possible.
That's the idea,
right? Which is interesting to see how that world splits, right? So you'll have people that probably spend 100% of their time in the metaverse just because they're more comfortable with the person that they created versus the person that they are. And then you'll have some people that kind of dip their toe into the metaverse occasionally and live a lot of their time outside. So it's fascinating to see. And, you know, just watching the space evolve. And to your point, right? 4th industrial revolution, right? When we had the 3rd industrial revolution, it was the same thing. Everyone was scared that jobs were going to go away. I think that jobs will go away, but you'll also have a shift in jobs. And so jobs will take a different form. People will do different things, but, you know, some jobs will be lost, but it's evolution.
Yeah, I'm in the optimistic camp of like people will do things that they actually are good at or somewhat are drawn to. Yeah, rather than going in and, you know, hating your life for the majority of your life just to pay rent.
Right.
And Graham, I know we
live in wild
time, but I wanted to get into DAOs a bit, dude. Because when I think about it, I think about a team like the Green Bay Packers, who are owned by Green Bay, the city of Green Bay. I can only imagine how that can, you know, change in the future, where they can just vote for like decisions that the team makes. I'm just curious to see where your head's at when it comes to DAOs.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in DAOs for a long time. Proud member of Metacartel Ventures. We tried to be a legal venture fund in a DAO format. The first one actually comes with a lot of problems. Like, you know, there's still back office work. These things are actual companies. We're Delaware C Corp. Someone needs to be our secretary and like clean up all the papers. You know, so people look at DAOs and they're like, huh? And I'm like, they're just companies with a freaking, you know, chat room wrapper around them. But that being said, that does allow people with similar interests to form a company. They don't need to live in the same time zone. They don't need to live in the same country. And that sort of, you know, goes back to our previous point of people doing what they're most interested in and what they're best at. Other than that, you know, I think we're going to see like an explosion of DAOs, because it is just a easier format to build a company with, you know, equity and voting right oriented shares. But it's all built on top of ETH, or we're seeing a lot of it move to L2s, but whatever, ETH for the sake of argument. And operating the business is just super easy. Like, imagine the entire infrastructure of a major corporation that has voting shares, right? Like, who's sending you those prospectuses? Like, this whole thing requires entire companies just to like receive these votes, right? And facilitate it. This is literally just some apps. Again, they're protocols. So once they're written, they're out. They can be used infinite times. And other people that come along and say, hey, I can make this a little better, are totally welcome to like add little features. And we're just seeing a lot of explosion happening around it. So your Green Bay Packers example is like perfect, because now it's probably a bunch of like lawyers juggling all that stuff, right? It's expensive, obviously takes a lot of resources, when we know that like if you don't have the shares, you can't vote. That can easily be facilitated by one ping on a chain. And we're seeing a lot of that move over. But we're increasingly, you know, the interesting thing about them is they do require like coordination, which once they get too big, we've seen a lot of DAOs start to fail. But very recently, I think if you're ever curious, there's a company called Shapeshift. They actually, you know, closed their doors, let go of all their staff, and said we're moving over to a DAO format. They've run it like a very solid company. And I think the DAO is worth about 7 times more than the business ever was. So
Wow.
It is cool. Yeah, it requires people, you know, that are comfortable working from a computer, not from an office. That's for sure. You're not necessarily going to hang out with your DAO partners in real life.
Yeah.
But, you know, it does open up all sorts of tool sets just to make this really easy, you know, flexible, fast. So I think they're amazing. You're going to see a lot of them come up. Big question right now is like, how do we juggle making a company on the internet, but also making sure that it is compliant and following all the rules that like a real business has to follow. But they're fun. You can launch them yourself, everyone, just so you know. There's things like DAO House, DAOHAUS, so the German spelling. But they've got tooling. Syndicate DAO just launched like a little interface where you can click and launch a DAO. And there's an amazing legal one that it just launched this week, so I can't remember what it's called. But it basically says like, do you want to be a nonprofit? Do you want to be an investing group? And it tells you like, what are the, you know, pluses and minuses, and you can literally a couple clicks get yourself a DAO, and the community run with them. Another one I actually have to say, I have to shout out because this is super, super interesting. There's a clothing company called Meta Factory, and they formed a DAO, and they have a token, and they've effectively used all of these mechanics to launch a real clothing brand. It's super cool. And it's worth a read just on their blog or whatever, if anyone's just like curious as to how it's happening. Awesome. But yeah, they've got like a legit, they sold $1 million worth of goods last year, I think.
Wow, nice.
Cool guy.
I like it.
Really smart. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Quick question, Graham. So with DAOs, I am a bit ignorant when it comes to them. When you're forming the DAO, how would you go about, or under what jurisdiction do they fall under? Like, do you have to incorporate or form the LLC under a particular state, or how does that work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it really depends. Like, it's got to be where the DAO members are. So for us, it would have to be US because you've got too many US people. And then from there, I think it's just like, you know, standard corp developments have sort of leaned towards Delaware because they make it very easy. There's a couple others. I know Wyoming is like really competing for that. But the first thing to figure out when starting a DAO is like, why are we starting a DAO? You can get a bunch of people together and do anything, but you know, in this case, you got to keep their attention. You're essentially trying to run a business, right? So you can't have people that are like half-assing it. You got to show up. Then you have to figure out, well, if this is decentralized, if it's owned by people, how do we pay the people that are operating it, right? How do we train people to vote? Do people want to vote, right? Like crypto came out with this time period where everyone was issuing governance tokens. But when you look at the governor of your state, like that's a prestigious job, right? It ain't easy to govern. So people don't want to come home after work and hop online and read giant proposals for really major decisions. So all of this is being figured out, right? Even in my DAO Metacartel, we slowed down tremendously when Ethereum gas prices went up because we formed this thing. We wanted to vote on all of these like cool deals. But then suddenly it's like, well, a vote costs $120. Maybe I'll wait and see what other people do. So there's a lot of these issues come into play, right? And if people aren't participating, obviously the idea of a group participating body, like, it's weakened. So when you are making a DAO, first step is like, why are we doing it? Very, very like clear reasons to do it sometimes. The second thing that's really cool is because it's crypto, you can open up a multi-sig account, so multiple signatures, which means you can essentially create a treasury. Everyone can pour their money into that treasury and they can all look at it and they can see every time money moves from it. And generally, it takes like a majority vote to move the money. So it is a really neat way for you to get in touch with, say, a 15-year-old in India that's just like jamming with the same thing you're jamming with. And then you get somebody from like Kazakhstan, right? Like, none of it matters as long as there's a web connection and a desire to build together. So, I mean, to bet or to doubt them would be to doubt human desire to just like group up and make things together. There's a lot on the legal side that people are still trying to poke and figure out. For the most part, we're just taking the standard company methods and wrapping them in the internet.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Graham, with that, we want to jump into something a little bit more, a little bit more relaxed. So we're going to jump into a rapid fire session where I'm just going to ask you 5 questions. 3 of them are crypto related, 2 of them are not. And I just want you to reply with the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. So whenever you're ready, you let me know and we'll go.
Ready.
All right, here we go. All right. What are your top 5 cryptocurrencies?
So I don't actually understand your question. Do they have to be currencies or can they be assets?
Yeah. Oh, okay. They can
That's
be
that legal background.
Good. All right. Either or.
Well, no, they're not all currencies, right? Not all these are money. Some of them actually do stuff.
Some of them are networks. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Right. So that's a really good question. I'm really on the network side. I think the Ethereum scaling solutions are really important to look at. So I love Avalanche. I think Polygon they just raised $450 million. I think Gnosis chain is super interesting. It used to be XDAI. It was a Polygon competitor. Gnosis is the multi-signature treasury that I just described. So they're going to have a chain that facilitates all this DAO stuff that we literally just tried to define. They're trying to define it. Other than that, let's move into there's a really cool thing in DeFi called protocol owned liquidity, where the protocols function in different ways to add more liquidity to the market, meaning less volatility. We can start to use these things naturally. Tokamak is really cool. Token is TOKE. I think I'm a huge fan of Thorchain, which has the token Rune, RUNE. That is essentially just to facilitate swapping between Bitcoin, native Bitcoin, and other chains. So you can spend Bitcoin, get Ethereum, right? That's actually really hard to do. So that opens up the layer then for applications to build on, swapping Bitcoin for ETH and all the other ones. I think that's really cool. The Terra ecosystem is extremely interesting. They're trying to build an algorithmic stablecoin that's completely decentralized. And remember, true decentralization is very hard and very important. And when something is truly decentralized, it's government resistant, it's anti-fragile, it's all these cool things that defy physics. So those are all some really cool ones. Beyond that, I'm trying to think if there's anything novel that just popped into my head. I think those would be my recommendations for now.
All right, cool. Second question: on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being full adoption, where are we currently in the crypto space?
I think we're somewhere around 3 and 4.
3 or 4.
Nice.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
And I say that because we go in these bull and bears, and man, in the 2017 was wild, right? Everyone thought tokens were here to stay, and then 2019, 2020, I was begging for people to buy tokens off of us. It went so far in the opposite direction. NFTs were a huge step forward, but I think we're at 3 or 4. I think by the Super Bowl, we might be approaching 4 or 5.
Nice. Ooh. Okay. All right. So third rapid fire question is, what excites you the most about the future of crypto?
Absolutely. So honestly, it's about breaking out of the 9-to-5 mold. That's what I think is the most exciting thing in the pursuit of all of this, is that people can start to live their lives around what their focuses are and be able to generate the value that they need to stay alive. That's the biggest thing for me. Second biggest thing would just be having my mind blown consistently, because it keeps doing that.
Like it. All right. So 2 questions, non-crypto related. If you could have dinner with anyone throughout the history of time, who would you have dinner with?
Oh man, that is
obviously
very
Mickey,
good
right?
Yeah. You know, I'd have to think about that more, but I think one of like the crazy explorers throughout history, like, you know, Shackelford comes into play, went just like deep into the cold with nowhere to go. Just like those, you know, Lewis and Clark kind of people that literally just like walk into the wilderness and they're like, we're gonna find new stuff. Yeah. That's where my initial gut reaction would be. Otherwise, I think Nikola Tesla would be pretty cool.
That's actually my the one that I would love to have dinner with is Nikola Tesla, actually. So
yeah,
all right, cool.
Be electrifying.
Absolutely.
I'll be here all day, folks.
And then the last rapid fire question is, what is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, The Fifth Element.
Nice.
Ooh, nice. All right, nice.
Bonus round.
Exactly.
Bengals or Rams?
Oh, Rams. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I will never root for an Ohio team.
Oh, all right.
Easy.
Awesome. Cool.
Guys, this is really fun.
You want to take us out, Manolo? Oh, G, before Manolo takes us out, where can they find you, dude? Plug yourself in.
You can find me on Twitter at G_centralized, or if you want to see some pretty pictures that I take, you can find me on Instagram at goodcrack, KRAK. Been under that handle, all 16 years I've known you. Yeah.
My man.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
All right, Graham, great having you.
Thank you, dude.
Another great one in the books. People, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the like button. And if you have any questions for Graham or anybody else in the future, please leave a comment below. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Graham.
Peace.
My pleasure.